Hello, filmmakers. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna just get jumping in here. Everybody, meet Matt.
Hi,
Matt,
everybody.
Matt is here from Blackmagic Design. He has 20 years of experience as a VFX supervisor, editor, and VR filmmaker. His credits include The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Transformers: Dark Side of the Moon, and whatever else, like just a bazillion credits. But right now, he's the VFX editorial workflow manager at Blackmagic Design. That is a mouthful. What does it even mean that you're the workflow manager at Blackmagic Design?
Yeah, so I'm part of a team that specializes in working with filmmakers, studios, and post houses to implement a full end-to-end Resolve workflow.
Ah,
So we've supported a number of different Disney Plus shows that shot on our cameras, used our hardware for on-set and Resolve Live for on-set, through editorial, VFX, final color, and delivery, all through Resolve the whole time.
wow, that's great. Well,
Yeah.
we appreciate you being here. So, those of you watching, let us know that you're here. What do you do? Why have you showed up? What questions have you brought to the table? This half hour is for you. So, if you've been wanting to learn something specific about DaVinci Resolve, we need to know what that is you want to learn. You can just put that right in the comments below. And until I hear from anybody, let's start with maybe something that I get asked a lot by filmmakers who they're trying to decide which editing software to use. And I'm always like, just learn DaVinci. It's going to make your life easier in the long run. Um, what do you recommend when people are starting and they're learning to edit? Is there classes? Is there something Blackmagic Design offers? Is it just going to tutorials online? Is there something that you recommend people to do to learn the software?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to learn is one to download the free version and dive right in. Along with just poking around the program, if you go to our website, which I've got up on my screen here,
How are you going to
and
find that up there?
yeah, and you go to DaVinci Resolve Studio, you'll see up here there's a training tab
Oh,
on the
nice.
kind of upper right hand side, and inside of here there's all sorts of follow along videos. There's downloadable files that you can use to follow along, and there's full training classes. So in these training books here, this is a downloadable PDF. You can download the lesson files and basically walk through the entire course and do an online exam to get your certification. So that's a great place to start. And there's also a lot of YouTube creators out there that have some really great tutorials and tips and tricks. So I would definitely look that up as well.
You can take it out. So it's funny. I'm asked all the time how people can learn. I had no idea that there was that much available on the website.
Yeah,
Monique
let me
has
get
a
started.
question for us. She says, "A very basic question I haven't been able to figure out on Google. What is the keyboard shortcut to get back to the cursor after you selected a different tool?" What
Interesting.
is it? Is it
Which
just arrow? Is that the one she's talking about?
Yeah, I guess my question would be which page. It might be the color page we're talking about.
Monique, which page in particular? Editing, color? Let us know. Yeah, she wants the arrow back. So, like, if she's in the editing program and she's picked like a crop tool or something.
I see. Yeah. So yeah, let's say you've clicked trim edit. If you want to get back to the selection mode, which would be the pointer, that's A. And you'll see there when I hover over it, I get a little tooltip that has selection mode A. So if I hit A, I can get back to it, or T to go into trim mode, A to go back to normal cursor select mode.
But it looks like also, yeah, I wish we could make this bigger. I'm thinking we're gonna do these future Tech Tuesdays on Zoom, y'all, so that we can actually get in and you can see these things and ask your questions. But the toolbar right at the top is another place for you to just click it. But great. Everybody who's just tuning in, we are answering your questions. So put them in the box. We're here for another 20 minutes to answer your questions about DaVinci Resolve. Again, as I wait for other questions to come in, can you show us I think one of the things that screwed me up when I first started using DaVinci Resolve was how to properly set up a project from the beginning.
Hmm.
So if you could go and act like you're just coming in, what
Sure.
am I doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Let me go ahead and let me close out Resolve here and start it for the first time. Okay. So the very first thing you're going to be presented with is the project manager. And the project manager is where your projects reside. There's three options up here. One is local, one is network, and one is cloud. And basically, these are just different project libraries that will hold your projects. So in the local library, these projects are actually stored on your local hard drive, the project files themselves. On network, that's a setup that you can do at a smaller facility to be able to share projects on your local network. And then cloud lets you access the project from anywhere in the world. We can get into that in a minute, but let's talk about just doing a new project. The easiest way to do it is just to click New Project on the lower right-hand corner of the project manager, and then give that project a title. And then it opens you up into the cut page. Now, the first thing you want to do is really kind of set your settings to exactly what you want your project to be. So in the lower right-hand corner here, you can go to Project Settings. It's a little gear icon. Or you can go to File, Project Settings, which is down here. I always use the icon. And then I'll go about setting my timeline resolution. So right now it's set to UHD. Maybe I'm going to be working on an HD project for my final deliverable resolution. So I will set my timeline to HD, even if I have higher res footage. If I'm delivering HD, I want to set my timeline to HD. Then I'll also set my frame rate to whatever the predominant material I'm working with is. So let's say it's 23976. I'll set it to that. And then I can adjust my video monitoring as I see fit. Right now it's 1080p, so that should be fine. If I had a UHD monitor, I could do a UHD monitor. Or if I had, a 1080p monitor like I do at this point, I would leave it alone. So those are a few of the first basic settings to get going. As you scroll down the master settings, there's other options in terms of setting up your proxy media format, optimize media, et cetera, et cetera. Depending on what kind of footage you're working with, you may or may not need to really mess with these settings. Below that, you have your working folders, and that's where you can set up where you want some of these secondary files to live. So your proxy generator or your proxy files, you might want them to live in the movies folder, which I'm on a Mac right now, and so that would work for me. Or I could send those to an external hard drive. Same thing with the cache files or the gallery stills files. So you can define all those different paths right here. So that would be your main settings. There's a whole slew of other settings which we can get into, but that's basically how I would start my initial project. Then I would go to my media page and then navigate in media storage to find the media I want to import into this project.
Monique was asking, how do you set it up if you want to deliver in 4K, but you want to cut in 1080?
Okay. So one great thing about Resolve is I can change this at any time. So if I cut in 1080 and now I want to deliver in UHD, I can change this to UHD. And now everything that I've done does scale up appropriately.
Wow, that's great.
But if I know I want to deliver UHD and I'm just going to be monitoring in HD, I would probably set up my timeline to be UHD and then just leave my monitoring setting to 1080p. That's how I would generally start it. But
So
if your
leaving
computer is if your computer is getting taxed a little bit too much, like the UHD is maybe requiring too much, and so the playback's not keeping up, you can always drop this down to HD for while you're working.
And then Daniel asks, how do I export a DCP with 5.1 surround sound? And is there an official tutorial for that?
Yeah, there probably is actually. If I come to here, we have delivering content. I am not 100% sure if it gets into delivering a DCP with 5.1, but it might. So that's worth checking out. In terms of doing that deliverable, let me just open up another project here. This won't be a 5.1 project, but I can at least show you kind of some of the basics. Let's see. Okay. So if I go to the deliver page here, there'll be a bunch of presets along the top. And well, IMF is in there, DCP isn't. So I would actually select DCP, select the flavor. If I had easy DCP, I would choose easy DCP. This is a third party encoder that is a separate license. And then I would choose my output track. Now, you'll see here, I only have one bus and it's a stereo bus. But if I had a 5.1 bus, I would be able to output that in my DCP. And so that would give me my 5.1 in a DCP.
Great. Thank you guys for those questions. For those of you who have questions left, please bring them in. We got another 15-ish minutes. So let me think of the other questions I'm always asked about this. So we've got an edit. We've got the project set up in edit. What happens next usually? So we would definitely want to do sound and color. When moving into color, are there things that the beginner filmmaker who's just teaching themselves color should be thinking about?
Yeah, the best place to start with color is setting your black point and your white point for each shot as kind of your first node. And then from there, you can really get into more of a creative grade. That's usually a good rule of thumb. Now, if you're working with raw footage that's in a log format, so it's a very flat color space, changing the format or applying a LUT to get it into more of a Rec 709 space is ideal. But
Can you
yeah, you have
show us
to.
that initial, Harley, can you start up? I would love to see the sort of that initial,
Sure.
here's how you set your whites, here's how you set your blacks.
Yeah, so if I'm on this clip and I go to the color page here, my first node I would really use to set my my lift and my gain. And you'll see here in the lift area, there's a little picker and it's just a little crosshair and there's a little black dot by it. Basically, that's letting me set the black point for this image. And you can see on my scopes that black point raises and lowers accordingly. So I can adjust this to a point where I feel comfortable. I don't want to clip my blacks too much. So I want to just nudge it. So the darkest part, which looks like this t-shirt back here, is just dipping into the black. And then I can adjust my white point by grabbing this wheel under gain and adjusting it as such. And so I do have some point lights in here. So those can actually be a bit over bright. So I can kind of boost this up a bit. And then from there, I would add another node by doing Alt S. And here I can start to get in my creative grade if I want to kind of do more of a high contrast look or push the color one direction or another, make things a little bit cooler. And so that way my creative grade is separate from my initial levels.
Oh, nice. Great. And then, Daniel has a follow-up on his DCP export. How to organize the audio tracks. What is the right order?
Let's see. So Daniel, let me do this. Can we share an email, Jen?
Yeah.
Cool. Daniel, if you could email us at workflow@blackmagicdesign.com, that'd be great. And we can give you kind of the very specifics on that. Mike Smolin on my team, he's the color pipeline specialist, and he deals with basically all the deliverables within our team. So he'll be able to walk you through the exact outputs on that.
Great. All right. And anybody else have any questions that you've joined us for that you're like getting stuck when you watch, when you're doing Resolve and you're just like, I love that Monique started with I can't remember how to get to the arrow key. Like that's what we're talking about. Any question, all questions, nothing's off the table. You have an expert here right now to help you. I personally am really overwhelmed by the VFX tab. I wish I could use it. It's a lot. Are there things about going into that that are like here, like if you can master this, the rest is a little easier?
Yeah, there are. So if we go to the Fusion tab, which is our little magic wand there, the base thing to understand here, well, there's a few things, but as far as the UI is concerned, it's organized on a clip basis, just like the color page. So I can navigate between clips and actually modify them as such. The other thing to keep in mind is that basically media in represents the clip coming from the media pool. You do your work on this pipe here, and then it goes out to media out, and that comes back to the edit page. So that's a basic thing to understand, which means I can drop effects here in the middle. So if I go to my effects panel and I start to look through these tools, I can get different effects that I want to drop in here. And I can actually go into open effects here too, which if you're familiar with the color page, you'll find a lot of these are similar. So let's say I drop a diffraction here. So now I've got an effect. Now I've done a very simple fusion effect. If I toggle that on and off, and let me make that a little bit bigger. That's how you can kind of get started. Now that's just scratching the surface of Fusion and really what you can do on here. You can have multiple nodes that branch off and then merge back into each other. So let's say I had a lens flare. I could just drop that node here, connect this output from the media in to the input of the lens flare. And then if I want to view this, there are 3 little dots here, and those correspond to if I'm actually viewing this effect or not. So if I drag this, if I click and drag this node into the viewer and release, you'll see the middle dot lights up. That tells me I've loaded it into viewer 2. And so now I see this lens flare effect, and I can move that around. So if these 2 nodes, I want to combine them in some way, I can connect the output of one to the other, and then they get merged together, and I can adjust how I want these 2 effects to blend together by adjusting some of the parameters in my inspector. So that's the real basics of it. One other thing to explore on the Fusion page is actually in the effects panel, go to templates and then Fusion, and there'll be a bunch of how-tos. So these will basically be little guides on how to use some of the tools within the Fusion page. So in particular for things like particles, I can drag in, let's see, this one called Burning Engine. And this will drag in a whole series of nodes that are used to create this effect, which you'll see as it renders. There we go. So this burning engine effect here came from the templates section of the effects panel. And then really what you can do is you can look through all these nodes and go one by one to see how this effect was built up. And that's for more advanced effects, but it's a great way to learn how to use Fusion to its full extent.
Yeah, that's great. While we have this open, Rolando has a question that I get a lot, and I had a hard time when I first started, which is how can I back up all the DaVinci files to another driver computer? I think even when people are like, I've saved my project in DaVinci, I've got it set up for my colorist, I take it to him on a hard drive, and we get there, and it's like, oh, wait, not everything I need is on this drive. Where's everything at?
Sure.
So can you go through how to back up and or save everything, the project, the files, everything you're working on?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the easiest way to get everything that I have over to somebody else is to go to your project manager, which is this home icon in the lower right-hand corner. You right-click on your project and you export a project archive. And so what this will do is it'll let you save this whole project out into a container file called a .dra. That's a DaVinci Resolve archive file. So if I just put that onto the desktop here, it's going to copy all the media files, the render cache, and the proxy media, or I can deselect any of these. In this case, I want to send everything to whoever's going to inherit this project. So I click OK, and a couple of these files were offline, so you'll get a warning if you do have any offline files. And so this is copying all the media into a new location. And once that's finished, I'll show you what it looks like on the colorist side, let's say, when they're importing this project on their side. Because Resolve is exporting all this into, let's see, I'll show you. Yeah, so right here, I've got copy of this project name .dra. And so inside of here, you'll see I've got a DRP, which is a DaVinci Resolve project, and all of my media files in the exact same folder structure as I originally had. So on the receiving side of this, I'm just going to make a new bin here so we're looking at something clean. I can right click and restore project archive. And then I can navigate to that .dra file. I select that folder and I click open. And it'll import not only the project, but it will be connected to all the media that is in that DRA folder.
That makes it so much easier than any way I've ever done this before.
Yeah, so this wraps up everything. Now, the one drawback about this is if you have a bunch of media in this project that you didn't use, it still gets wrapped up in the DRA. The DRA basically wraps everything up. You can minimize the amount of stuff that you send over manually or by using a tool called media management, but that does get a little bit more involved.
Cool. Lucky comes in with the complicated question. When I export Resolve 1.3 in Pro Tools format, this may make more sense to you. In Pro Tools ends up with some tracks out of sync, lock tracks in Resolve, yada, yada. I'll let you read that because I'm like, this is Greek to me.
All right. End up with some tracks out of sync, lock tracks in Resolve, MXF, and I even tried just waves. Thanks. Interesting. And I'm assuming 18.3. So that sounds like a bug. So I would report that to our support channels. But yeah, you should be able to export to Pro Tools and have everything be in sync. I assume you're using this, but if we go to the deliver page on my screen, I assume you're using the preset to export to Pro Tools. And generally that's going to give you what you want. You can either export with video or without. And then when you do it without, that gives you a couple additional options on your export. But if you're still seeing that bug, then we want to probably get a diagnostics log or maybe a very small example, a .dra file that shows this issue in action so we can fix that bug.
Great. And then Monique wants to know, is there a place where she can get all the most common shortcuts for Resolve?
Yeah, like a cheat sheet. If we show my screen here, under the DaVinci Resolve drop-down menu, and you go to keyboard customization, you can find the different commands here. So change clip duration, we can see the keystroke is Command D, et cetera, et cetera. So you can navigate through this menu to find the specific commands. Or let's say you know what the function's called, you can actually look it up. So if I say link clips, I can see that link clips is Alt Command L, and that will link or unlink clips. So that's the simplest way I know of to find what shortcuts are out there. I imagine somebody online is going to have some of the common ones laid out like in a printable form, but I don't have a good link for that, unfortunately.
We have a couple of minutes left. If anybody has any last minute burning questions, Vladimir, does the face refinement tool Magic Mask support export with handles? I just exported some clips,
Hmm.
and the handle frames didn't have the effects.
I don't think they will actually, because Resolve is basically having to run an AI to generate that mask, and then the results of that are getting saved in the file. If it never analyzed through those frames, it won't process those frames.
And Lucky, I don't know if you've seen, but Rolando wanted to suggest the KHZ are using on Pro Tools 40. Oh, he wants to know if you're using 41 or 48. So he might have some answers if you can hit them and they're lucky. Thank you all for your questions, for everything coming in. If there's any last minute questions, bring them up. I'm trying to think of anything else that I get asked a lot about Resolve. So we've gone through everything. We've gone through, you have your edit tab. What am I forgetting? We went through VFX. We touched on a little bit on audio.
Mhm.
We touched on color. Am I missing something?
Yeah, we talked about delivery. Let's see. Yeah, it just really comes down to the specific tasks then. If people have questions about, data burn-ins or whatever, there's so many. It's such a deep program that,
Mhm.
it really is subject by subject.
That's why I literally was like, I'm not gonna even bring questions. I want these guys to show up and ask questions because you're right. Like it just can go. It just depends on what people need. This has been really great. I hope to do this again as maybe even more of as a class style where we get people in Zoom in a few months, maybe if we can bring you back, that'd be great.
Sure.
This is
Absolutely.
super helpful. And I get questions about Resolve all the time, and I'm like, I don't know. Go ask those people.
Yeah,
uh,
I would look at our forum too. It's a great place to, join that community and post questions and get answers from other people who are experienced using Resolve.
Great. I'm glad you guys are helping each other. If you're not already, go to the Black Magic Collective group and put these kinds of stuff. Like you guys have the Black Magic Collective Facebook group. If you go to I forgot the short handle of it. You'll find on Facebook. Just look it up. These are the kind of places where you should communicate, and you guys can ask these same questions and help each other out. We need you all in there. But thank you so much, Matt, for your time. And tune in, everybody, next week, Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific. We're going to talk. Well, I won't actually be hosting. Chris Edgar will be hosting a whole talk on podcasting, how you get booked on film podcasts, how you have the best sound quality, anything and everything you want to know about podcasting. It's going to be there. So we'll catch you next week. Until then, bye.
Bye-bye.